Welcome to the Open Forum of the WEF in Davos. Herzlich willkommen. Ich freue mich, dass Sie so zahlreich gekommen sind.
Welcome to Davos. Thank you for coming so numerous. Over the next 3/4 of an hour, I will be accompanying you through the discussion. Open Forum is a novelty, and the idea behind this is that we're going to have a real dialogue, that we're going to hear criticism about globalization, and I'm going to try and get you to speak as much as possible, because unless you participate in the discussion, then there is no dialogue. And I don't want to have just a podium discussion going. You have interpretation into English and into German. We will speak in High German, not Swiss German, and in English. And just to give you an opportunity to speak, let me just tell you how I've planned the evening. We're going to be talking about fair trade. Is fair trade an alternative, a serious, a proper subject, particularly at a time when the economy is running into difficulties? And particularly the poorer countries are suffering more than the industrialized countries at this time. We've got Max Havelaar, which is a concrete example. And what I intend to do is that in the first round, we will have concrete examples regarding Max Havelaar. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? Why is it still a niche production? And I'd like to include you on this side, and on the other side there are roving microphones, and just ask for the floor and tell us who you are before you make your comment or ask your question. In the second part, we will look at the relations between industrialized countries and the third world countries, and in particular we'll be looking at what protectionist measures are being taken, how much protectionism there will be in the future, how much can we turn the clock back. We have a very attractive podium. You will be able to see this for yourself. I'm going to rely on the audience. We've got Hansjörg Walter. He is a member of the Swiss Parliament, and he is president of the Swiss Farmers Association. Next to him, we have Claude Hauser. Claude Hauser is head of the Migros cooperative in Zurich, and he is also responsible for running Max Havelaar products. So in the Migros shops, you can find Havelaar products. Next to him, we have a representative of the new Brazilian government, and we're very happy that you're with us, sir. Luiz Fernando Furlan. Mr. Furlan is Minister for Development, Industry and Trade, I think. And he used to work in industry, so he has a lot of experience. And perhaps he'll be able to give us more knowledge about that later on. Then our highest guest for this evening, Monsieur Couchepin. Mr. Couchepin is the president of the Swiss Confederation. He's not here as Home Minister, but as a former Minister of the Economic. And he obviously was very closely related to the subject of this evening. Carlos Vargas is sitting next to him. Mr. Vargas comes from Costa Rica. He is a coffee planter. He sells a part of his coffee harvest to fair trade, to Max Havelaar. But he is also involved in the export of coffee, generally speaking. And we have Paola Ghillani, and I'd like to open the podium discussion with her. She is a co-sponsor of this forum evening tonight. She is head of the Max Havelaar Foundation, or perhaps I could call her a CEO. She used to be a pharmacologist. She studied pharmacology. She worked for SIBA and switched to Max Havelaar a few years ago. And she has been very successful. She has increased sales quite considerably since she's taken over. And she is also one of the global leaders of tomorrow. Paola Ghillani is going to tell you about Max Havelaar Fair Trade and how she sees things.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Heute Abend werde ich versuchen.
This evening, I'm going to try and speak in English.
Let's start a little bit with some history. It's now 10 years that the fair trade labeling system is existing. It has been founded by NGOs, charity organizations, and as well alternative trade organizations. Today there are in the world 17 fair trade labeling organizations, national initiatives, and we have founded in 1997 an international fair trade labeling organization called FLOW International. FLOW International is defining the international standard for fair trade. These standards are covering the 3 pillars of sustainable development, the economic pillar, the social pillar, and as well the environmental pillar. But what is our task? In multinational company, they would say our mission. Our mission is, in fact, to open the market to disadvantaged producers and workers in developing countries, and this at fair trade conditions, in order that they can cover their cost of production and they can get a decent living. With this decent living, they can live with their family in dignity. The second part of our task is to certify that the products carrying the Max Havelaar label or the fair trade label are produced and traded according to the international fair trade standards. Our objective, or let's say the objective of the civil society and NGO who has founded the fair trade labeling system, was in the beginning to give access to any consumer to the fair trade product in the mass market, in the big retail chain, because you know that fair trade was already existing through the world shops. In Switzerland, Claro, Weltläden, and Magasin du Monde for the Romandie. We have achieved this objective. Today we are growing by 30%. We will probably go over the bar of the 100 million Swiss franc in Switzerland. Worldwide, we are reaching a generated turnover of around 300 million euro, but of course still, as compared to big multinational, we are still a drop in the ocean. And that is why our dream or our vision, let's say our request to us all this evening, is that fair trade becomes the norm and no more the exception. We want to be an example to follow, be it with a Max Havelaar label or a fair trade label, or with no label at all. But what is important is that we bring more balance between the exchanges between North and South. Thank you for your attention.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you. Mr. Couchepin, when you hear this, now, of course, you participated in international trade. You know what the atmosphere is like. What do you think of this dream? The fact that there should be just fair trade, that should be the standard policy.
I'll also try to speak in English because our partners here, most of them speak English. Well, I am convinced that Max Havelaar is a very good thing, and every success of Max Havelaar is a success for poor people, farmers who can cover, as Mrs. Ghillani said, cover the cost of production and give a decent level of living to the family. And it is also true, I have here some figures which show that Max Havelaar has success. bananas, 22% of the volume of the bananas are sold according to Max Havelaar criteria. Honey, 10%, flowers, 8%, coffee, tea, orange juice, 5%. It means that there is a success, and probably there is still much room for headways in the future. But during these last days, and in one of my last travels abroad, I was very much interested by what happened on the coffee market. As you probably know, during the last 10 years, South Vietnam developed the production of coffee in the heights where there were before rubber productions. And they developed it very hugely, big production of coffee. The result is, unfortunately, that the price fell down, and Havelaar yes or Havelaar no. Vietnam tries to, and other producers of coffee try to sell their production. And and probably it is still true, if some of the laws of the normal economy still play, to consume more coffee, you need to reduce the price. Or if you have too much offer, you must reduce the price to try to sell the big amount of coffee which is produced. And during the last years, the price of coffee declined, not because the big companies wanted it. And I was last week in Nestle, and they said, for us, we prefer a stabilization and a light increase of the price of the coffee rather than great changes in the price of coffee. And Havelaar is a solution, but it is not the only solution, because in such a case, it is impossible with the Havelaar principles to solve the problem of overproduction. Because if you keep the prices high, the increase of consumption of coffee will not improve. So when the prices are down, people buy more coffee, and so Vietnam can sell more coffee.
But,
now they've reduced the production.
Mr. Couchepin,
yes?
Why did Vietnam start to produce coffee?
Because at the time of the French, they produced rubber.
Yeah.
But now rubber is no more produced in the trees, and other countries of the world produce also rubber, and there is artificial rubber, and rubber is no more so much used as before. So they have to find...
Yes, but there are other products.
Yes, they have to find another production. And I don't know exactly the details of the decision, but it was a good place to produce coffee, and they started producing coffee, and they produced too much coffee, and so they provoked fall down of the price.
Mr.
Max
Vargas?
Havelaar is a good solution, but it is not the only solution. In such a case, Max Havelaar can't give a good answer.
Mr. Vargas, are you a victim of Vietnam?
Not of Vietnam, of too much production. No, let us try to avoid...
Are you as a coffee farmer of Costa Rica, a victim of the coffee farmers of Vietnam?
Well, I will not say a victim, but we are impacted by the situation that Vietnam has now produced about 12 million bags of coffee, and 20 years ago it produced almost nothing. So that's, we are, as a producer, I'm impacted by the Vietnam production.
Können Sie uns ein bisschen mehr...
Could you tell us a little bit of the advantages you get from working with Max Havelaar? You are a coffee producer, you export, you are a coffee exporter. You have 4 hectares, I think, on your coffee plantation. With 4 hectares in Costa Rica, can you survive as a coffee farmer?
Well, first I would like to point out 2 things. I think We are missing a chair on this panel. And the problem is not that we are missing one chair, it's the person that should be there. There is someone from the transnational company that should be here in this panel to talk about what is their position in relation to the fair trade market. Why do they support or not support the fair trade market? Because I think they are the company that are making 60 or 70% of the coffee market, and they have a very good possibility to make changes or to have keep a better price to the farmers. And going back to the question, I will make you remember that I come from Costa Rica, and about 4 days ago I was living in Costa Rica with 25 centigrades temperature, sunny days, and now here I am in so much cold and seeing snow for the first time in my life. So I am kind of cold and kind of also kind of nervous of being here. And then I have no choice. I have to talk in English because I don't speak German, so I have to do it in English. And sorry for you because maybe it's not the best English for me. Okay, what is the impact of the fair trade for a coffee farmer? In Costa Rica, we are about 72,000 coffee farmers. And on average, we have about 2 hectares per farmer. So you can see there is a production of small coffee growers. Very, very few coffee farmers has very large plantations. In a hectare of coffee, normally we produce about 3,000 pounds of green beans, raw material. 4,000 in some area, depending to the quality of the variety and the attention that is given to the plantation. The cost to produce coffee for a farmer is somewhere around 85 cents per pound. Okay. And the market right now is somewhere around 65 cents. And some months ago it was around 45 cents. So you can see that we are quite impacted by the coffee low prices. The Max Havelaar system, the fair trade, has a minimum price of $1.26 per pound. And that's a minimum price. If the price of coffee goes, in the international market, goes below that, that's the minimum price that a buyer in the fair trade system will pay to the producer in the country where it's produced. With that $1.26, we are able to pay about 6 cents. That is taken to all the administrative costs and export costs of the organization that is in charge of doing that. There are then about 20 cents, that is the cost of receiving the fruit, the cherry from the farmer, and convert that into a green bean that is ready to be exported. So that means that the farmer will receive, under fair trade conditions, about $1 per pound. And the cost of production is about 85 cents. So that's why we have a minimum price for the coffee. In that way, the producer will be able to pay all the costs of production and even make some profit to improve his quality of life. So that's what I mean, that's what is important for us, the fair trade market.
That means that you get double the price than you from Max Havelaar than you get normally.
At this moment, it is. It's a situation like right now. We have to know that the price of coffee is very volatile, moves very easily. Sometimes have been even above $2 per pound, but right now and for quite some time has been below $1 per pound, and seems like it's going to be below that for quite a while. So that's why we are very worried for the producers.
And you said there are 72,000 coffee farmers in Costa Rica. What's the percentage of the Max Havelaar farmers?
Yeah, I'm a coffee farmer, and I work for an organization that is part of the fair trade system. We represent 9 cooperatives with 3,500 members that are the one that receives the benefits of the fair trade market. So that's about 5% of the total coffee growers in Costa Rica. Our production is about 3% of the national crop. So that means that we are smaller as an average than the national average of coffee growers. And also our coffee growers are most of them, or all of them, located outside of the Central Valley of Costa Rica. The Central Valley is the area that is more developed. So we are focused on the disadvantaged producers. So we work with the producers that are located outside of the Central Valley of Costa Rica.
So you said about 3% you have fair trade. Claude Hauser, in den Regalen der Migros findet...
On the shelves of Migros, you find Max Havelaar products, not just coffee, but we would like to stick to coffee for the time being. How many percent is sales with Max Havelaar coffee? Before I speak of coffee, let me just say a few things. For us, our success will depend on the customers. We've got to give them the best performance. The lowest prices are often what people look for, but we've got to provide customers with value added, which means food safety, a total guarantee, and ethics as well. And that is why Max Havelaar does provide value added to customers. We have a problem when we speak of fair trade or environment. How do we control that when we have contracts and we have these signed? It doesn't mean to say that the production actually respects what we want. And that is precisely why we need people, organizations like Max Havelaar, that make sure, that give us a guarantee that the people are really going to stick to the rules. We are very happy with Max Havelaar. We're happy to work with them. Max Havelaar is probably the best known organization for fair trade in Switzerland. I've looked at the figures. I'm very surprised by them. If you ask people, without mentioning a name, who stands for fair trade, 50% say spontaneously Max Havelaar. And if you put Max Havelaar in a list, 2/3 of the people say that Max Havelaar is the best organization. I'm just saying this just to put this in perspective. Now, what about the product range? We have the full range in the Migros supermarkets. And when we speak more specifically of coffee, one more thing about Max Havelaar. Half of our sales are with Max Havelaar, and we've got incredible increases. We've got about 50% increase over last year. So we are being successful in the market with these products. For all Max Havelaar products, for the full 10 articles. Now, to answer your question about coffee, this only represents 6%. It's not very much, but the price difference is very high. It's about 30%. And here you have an example, a Max Havelaar coffee. And what do? Because the price is twice as high compared with the world market, we've got to provide value added, and that is the bio label. We sell coffee which is both organic and Max Havelaar, which is 30% more expensive, but it's excellent coffee. Believe me, I recommend that you buy this coffee. And what about Max Havelaar without the organic seal? Well, I haven't got an example with me here, but we're trying to combine them. The addition is between 5 to 30% over the normal product. 30% is the maximum difference. Can I just come to the last point? Of your total coffee sales in the Migros, how much is represented by Max Havelaar? 5%? 6% of our coffee sales. It's not very much, I suppose. In the case of Max Havelaar, tea, 15%, honey, 15%, roses, 13%. So it changes. We've got bananas as well. There is a big difference there, 20%. 6% for coffee. Mrs. Ghillani, when it comes to Czechs, Ultramar coffee in the 1970s, there was a real problem with it because it wasn't really nice to drink. How have you achieved this big quality improvement, and how serious are you with your Czechs?
Carlos answers this question about the quality because he is producing the coffee, but what I can say is that normally people believe that there is one Max Havelaar coffee, and in fact there are more than 60. We are working more than 30 roasters of coffee, and it's depending a lot about the subjectivity of the people. If a person like coffee with milk or like an Italian espresso, of course, this person would need to buy, without mentioning a brand, but the Kikodoro with the Max Havelaar label or La Semeuse with the Max Havelaar label. But if a person like a normal organic coffee, then the best quality is probably by Migros and Coop. And we can find as well very good coffee in Claro and Veltleden. But for the quality, I think probably Carlos is the best person to speak about that. I just wanted to know about the controlling. The controlling, yes. The controlling, we are doing the controlling systematically once a year. We are following the ISO norm for the certification organization, which is Flow International. And we are controlling regularly the producers through local inspectors. May I just stop with the quality question and ask Mr. Furlan if you're listening to this discussion? Is that a luxury discussion for a country like Brazil?
Well, you know that Brazil is the largest coffee producer, and I see that Max Havelaar is using the Brazilian flag right here, which is very good. Because anyway, I believe that this is a very good initiative. I was appointed minister of January 1st, coming 40 years work in the private sector, so everything is new for me. But what is not new is international work and also all these issues related to go into the markets. And I was very happy about 10 days ago when the new President Lula, he took all the ministers to visit the poorest regions of Brazil, and crossing a river in a barge in the other margin, somebody came to me and told me that he was engaged to deliver products from that region to fair trade. And I was surprised because that, I would not say that that is the end of the world, but it's far away. Well, we took 2 planes, a small plane and then a bus and then the barge to arrive there. So it's difficult to the government to arrive there. They are lacking of everything, but the fair trade was there, and that is encouraging. No, you can imagine what is the difference that makes to that community to have a channel to distribute their products having a premium price. Because normally what happened with the poor communities is that they need to deliver products at a very low price to intermediates, and then the exporters also face a lot of barriers to access the market. So if you realize the amount of money that a poor producer has, maybe it's 5% of the consumer price at the end of the chain. And by the way, I knew this morning that Switzerland is producing sugar, which was a big surprise for me. And it was told to me that it costs 3 times the normal production price. I cannot understand why Switzerland needs to produce sugar, because when when you talk about coffee, you know, for all of us, when you talk about coffee, that brings milk and sugar. So that's why my mind was linked to these products. So I believe that that is a very good initiative. As Minister of Development and Trade and Industry, I would like to have more information for that because I will be one of the supporters of the program. But also, we have to consider that the world is divided in two parts, those who have money and those that don't have money. And if we don't take care of the largest part of the world that are related, who don't have money, that are suffering of fame. Like, well, my country has 45 million people under the poverty level. Can you imagine a rich country like Brazil having this situation? It's almost impossible that it could happen, but we have that. So one of the major commitments of the new government with President Luiz Carlos Lula da Silva that will be tomorrow here, it is to eliminate the fame that we will give 3 meals a day to 45 million people in 4 years. And that is a huge commitment to a new government that is looking to the social. And we need also not only the hope of people like you here, but we need also the help, not as aid. We don't need aid. We need market access. I'm not talking about Switzerland, that is, as we all know, in terms of consumption. It's a great country, but a small country in population. But when you talk about Europe and some other countries in North America that do not make possible the access of products coming from the developing countries, that means that the surplus that is produced in the so-called first world depress the international prices and increases poverty in the developing world.
Thank you so much. I think that that's the topic we are going to discuss just after this first part, but I want to ask Mr. Walter.
That was a brief introduction.
Yes. Ich möchte Sie fragen, Herr Walter.
I want to ask you, Mr. Walter. We were hearing from Mr. Furlan what is the situation about sugar production in Switzerland. Wouldn't it be more reasonable to stop producing expensive sugar in Switzerland, but to import that sugar from countries of the third world and to make our contribution in the process to development and to the survival of those communities there? Well, good evening, everybody. Are you trying to save time or win time? Well, you know that to be able to drink coffee, you need sugar. And it is true that we in Switzerland, we are trying to develop our agriculture in an environmentally friendly manner. We want to be able to have as many crops as possible, not to have single crop production. We have different areas, and we have a lot of sugar beet in Switzerland. We have the non-mountainous area. Of course, don't think that we produce sugar here in Davos. We import about 50% of our sugar needs, and this also allows us to buy sugar, particularly from the third world countries. And we have the appropriate programs to enable us to do that. That's certainly important. And I just say that environmental protection is important. We want to keep our soil as fruitful as possible, and that is what characterizes our agriculture. In other words, we have to grow sugar in Switzerland? Well, how do I answer this? Of course we could do something different. We could produce an environmentally friendly program, but we want to produce certain things, and our farmers also want to earn some money, and they earn money with sugar beet. Through the WTO, we have certain agreements, we have certain commitments. We do buy, and we buy also from the EU, not just the third world. So it's always a bit of a difficult question as to who produces what where. I think that the more important question is how we can open up food markets, how we can provide market access to producers from the third world. And I think that the farmers in the third world countries are often in the same situation as we are. Of course, a lot of these farmers are dependent as our farmers are. I think, of course, we've got to have a principle of fair trade. And I think that the objective should be that in those countries where they have small holdings, where there isn't a lot of capital available, and where they're trying to build things up, I think socially environmental development is important. And that's important for their development too. There are lots of discussions going in the WTO. And if you listen to those discussions, many of the countries believe that they produce with Western methods, but they forget the environmental and the social impact of their development. And a lot of these small holdings are simply destroyed. You can't just make them into farm laborers. I was in Estonia recently, in Tallinn, and the Minister of Agriculture from Poland was there, and he said, we don't want to become sort of westernized. They spent 40 years under communism, and he said they don't want to become the farm laborers of the West. They want their farmers to earn money as well. And I believe that if you look at international trade conditions, there are certain priorities, and I think we must look at multifunctionality. Can I make a point? Let me say something about organic farming. That is typical for the Migros. Migros finds it very difficult to communicate the value added of organic food. The fact that the farmers are producing something which has a social advantage as well. And I think when we talk about organic farming, it's very difficult for people to have trust in it. And Mr. Hauser was saying, how do we control things? You can't control whether the products have been grown in a socially acceptable manner or whether the prices have been respected. It's very difficult to determine whether the eggs have been produced by farmers who are happy or whether they have been provided with sufficient training. You can't tell from the product. And so often you just have the term organic put on the product, but people don't know what's behind it. I suppose we're going to have a stamp on the products which says made by a happy farmer, and then you'll be happy. But we need to look at international trade flows. And I'd like the panelists to have an opportunity to speak about Max Havelaar, coffee, and other aspects related to this. I had the impression that we were going to have people saying how wonderful Max Havelaar was. Are there any criticisms? Do you think that the prices are still not fair? I would like to get you to participate in the discussion. With a microphone, please.
Mikrofone, die werden da. Wenn Sie sich jeweils kurz vorstellen.
Can you tell us your name as well, please? Pascal Miner is my name. I have grown up here, but now I live in Zurich, and I work in an international company. I have a question to you, Mr. Couchepin. When you look at supply and demand, that's fine. But somewhere there is a problem, is how much the customer is going to be prepared to pay. there might not be too much demand and there's too much supply, and the farmers are forced to lower their prices and they get much less for their coffee price. But the customer provides the demand. They never get any reductions. Whenever prices go down, when there are such big fluctuations, we, the customer, never see those fluctuations. And it's not the farmers who earn money, it's the big companies, but it's not the workers. It is the people who already are rich who earn more money, but not the poor who really need to earn more. Thank you.
Preisüberwacher.
What about price controls then? Why is it producers just feel that prices are being pushed down?
Because I am not in this business, but I am convinced that Nestlé has no interest with this kind of Schwankungen, these differences in prices. They have more interest to have a stabilization of the prices with a light increase, because when there is a fall down, all of a sudden, they have also many reserves and they will lose on the reserves. And when it is going up again, they will also lose because they have long-term contracts. I'm convinced that a firm as Nestlé is absolutely convinced that it is much better for them to have a stabilization of the price. But in this kind of production, we spoke of Vietnam. 20 years ago, there was no production. Now they are the second biggest producer. And the question you raise is almost the same I had to answer in Switzerland when people asked me the price for the farmers declined during the last years. Nevertheless, the prices at Migros and Coop stay stable. And my answer, but it is up to Migros to answer for that too, was it is not no more the same product. When my mother bought vegetables to make the soup, at the time she bought some potatoes and vegetables, and after that she cut the vegetables and she prepared the soup. Now you buy a whole package of vegetable which is completely prepared for the soup. And the value added in this product is much more the process of the products and the product itself. But Migros must answer, and I think it is a real problem in every country and the international market. But the answer is not as simple as you think.
Die Preise sind massiv.
The prices have collapsed in coffee. Coffees in the restaurants have gone up in price in restaurants. What about at Migros? Unfortunately, says the Migros representative, I don't have the breakdown of the price. But if you look at the price of the raw material, and even when there is a fluctuation, it doesn't mean to say that the whole chain becomes cheaper. We're talking about the price of the coffee bean, and then you've got to dry it, and then you've got to roast it, to dry it, to package it in sacks. And until you get to the product in Switzerland, the costs have remained more or less the same. And obviously, we have different prices than they have in the third world countries. The difference in the raw material price has a very small impact. In a cup of coffee, how much is there in terms of coffee? If the restaurant owner adds 10 centimes, that's probably a lot. I don't think you can earn a big living selling coffee in a restaurant. So the raw material makes up a very small price. But Mrs. Ghillani, in the case of coffee, we were saying earlier on that in many cases these are very small areas where the coffee growers work. Is this one of the reasons why we have this price structure? Is it because of the fragmentation, the atomization of coffee plantations? Is it the reason why they have so little power in the negotiations that they have with their buyers? I think it is probably the second most important commodity sold internationally.
This is a problem because more than 60% of the coffee trade is traded through 3 or 4 big multinational companies, and they are controlling all the chain. So the bargaining power of the small, older producers is very weak. I would like to say that we have in Switzerland a huge responsibility towards this coffee trade because because these big multinational companies are, most of them working as well through Switzerland, through Zug, and at least they have a mailbox there, and it's very important to know that we have a huge responsibility for that. I would like as well to answer the question about the overproduction and the price that are going down. I think that certainly the governments and the big multinational companies have a huge responsibility with this overproduction. Why? Because why are we producing coffee in Vietnam? Maybe Vietnamese want to produce it, but probably it's because they have got a market for it. And if I'm taking the example of China, we are just speaking now about Vietnam, but China is the next one who is going to produce coffee. And who is making the deal? Big multinational company wants to enter the Chinese market, and that is why they help the Chinese people to grow coffee in China. And then they are telling us simply, and I have nothing against multinationals, but they are telling us that they want stable prices. Are we dreaming here?
Es sind ganz viele Leute, die sich hier auf dem Punkt.
There are a lot of people who'd like to speak, but I'd like to involve the audience. There are a lot of people. You have asked for the floor before, so... Oh, perhaps we can start at the back, because otherwise we'll waste too much time. Hello. My name is Rafael Hades. I come from Brazil. My question is, we are speaking about the future, trade in the future. My question to the panelists is, what about the effect in the country of origin and the impact in the buying country? How can we deal with the social inequalities? Because when we speak about coffee, if you drink an Italian coffee or an espresso, in Brazil, people say, well, this is too strong. But when you drink a German coffee in Brazil, we say it's too weak. Migros has already started to try and introduce other cultures into Switzerland. But I'd like to know how in the future we will continue with trade without taking into account the culture or the cultural demands of the buying and the selling countries.
Was ich sagen möchte, zuerst eine Antwort.
Let me give you one answer. The Swiss market for coffee, it only represents 0.3% of the global market, very small indeed. However, if we can do something, then it's already a good idea. We already will set a precedent. When the prices go down, when the producers produce under the production costs, there are two things that happen. Mr. Brabeck says, and he's the CEO of Nestle, he says the prices go down, they lose money. However, when the prices go down too far, the producers have to make savings. They are less careful in production. And what do we expect? What do we want? We want quality. Coffee is not a luxury product. It's not a luxury product, but it's something that we like it. We want to have very good coffee. And when you speak about culture, we want to have Arabica coffee. We want to have top quality, well roasted, and we want to have good aroma. And that is why we're worried when the prices go down. We're not happy when the prices go down. And as for the sales prices, now people always believe that if the world price for coffee goes down, then the sales price for coffee will go down. Let me explain things. When we speak with Max Havelaar, and that is one of the advantages of fair trade, we pay the same price even when the price goes down. That is the business model. We ensure that the producers get a decent price for their product. We can do that as long as the Max Havelaar proportion isn't too great, or as long as the price differential isn't too great between ordinary coffee. But we would like the world price of coffee to get as high as possible above the production cost, because otherwise, in the long term, we're all going to be in difficulties. Well, a lot of panelists want to react, but we'll just take one person from the auditorium first before I give the floor to the panelists.
My name is Thomas Ernst.
My name is Thomas Ernst. I come from Nyon.
If Max Havelaar pays twice the money that you would get elsewhere, why don't the 95% of the other producers join your road and also go to Max Havelaar?
Well, I think that 100% of the coffee growers in the world would like to be members of the Max Havelaar market. That's for sure, especially at this moment. But we have to recognize that the Max Havelaar market is still very, very small. So there is no space for more producers. In our case, in our co-op, we only are able to sell a third of our crop to the fair trade market. The other two-thirds have to be sold to the conventional market because there is not enough market. It's very, very small. So that's why we need to this market to grow. And I would like to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the quality and about the surplus in the coffee production. That's a point that many people say that the Max Havelaar coffee, so the coffee that we as producers supply is not very good quality. I have an answer that in our case, in Costa Rica, I know that most of the Central American countries are providing fair trade coffee to the gourmet coffee in the United States, in North America, which is a market that is growing. And so I suppose that means that we are providing quality. I have a meeting one of these days with a roaster, and he was saying that at this moment the Max Havelaar coffees are much better than the conventional coffees, and there is a reason for that. We as producers, we're going to be very careful with the one that is paying a very good price for our coffee. If we have to sell coffee at $1.26 to the Max Havelaar and 65 cents to another roaster, we're going to be very careful with the one that is paying a fair price for our coffee. So we are providing a good quality coffee. But quality is not only an issue that depends on the producer. It also depends on the roaster. It also depends on the retailer. So we have to also be sure that retailers and roasters are doing their job in relation to the quality. And the other thing is in relation to the surplus that is really affecting the market. About 10 million bags that are the surplus right now. The producing countries has proposed that a certain percentage of the coffee production, the low-grade coffee, can be destroyed because those are affecting the market. And I think that's something that has been said in this panel, that quality is very important. But the industry is against that. The producers are in favor of that, but the industry is against that. And that was only 2 months ago, the president of the National Coffee Association in the United States was talking about that. They were against the possibility of destroying certain percentage of the coffee crop. And some other big company has said the same. So I think it's very important that we would like to find options to make the price of coffee increase. But we need support from the industry, support from the government, support from the consumers. And I think that that can be a short-term solution for the price of the so low price of coffee right now.
Einfach die Ernte vernichten, um den Preis.
Destroying the harvest to get the prices up. We did this in Switzerland with apricots. Is this the right kind of solution? Would you support this? No, that cannot be a solution. Whenever I hear this, I think that this is always the same problem. We've got to perhaps think about other products. What should be the message that goes out from this podium? That message must be that if we're going to open up our markets to third world countries, whatever the conditions are, and I hope that this will be done under WTO 2, because we Swiss farmers also are in favor of this. We want to have fair conditions for the producers and not just at the government level where there are export subsidies, where there are market support mechanisms, or the kind of mechanisms being suggested by the EU. But that we keep in mind the people we're trying to help, the farmers themselves. And the representative from Migros said, the producer has a price which only accounts for 5% of the final price. You've got to make sure that they get a fair price because that's the only way to get out of our difficulties. And we realize, of course, that there are no easy solutions. But if you have a lot of overproduction and if competition is used to put prices down, then the whole system will not work. As far as fair prices are concerned, we farmers too also constantly talk about fair prices. We have, of course, a very strong position in Switzerland for our farmers. There are certain things that we need to do for the image of Switzerland, but I think that we've got to develop this message. I have been discussing things with our board today. I wonder whether it might not be a good idea for Switzerland to work together with the Max Havelaar Foundation and to take them as a model for us. I think this should be a basis for the Doha Round, for the integration of third world countries and the condition for them to have access to our markets. And I think that we need to make sure that there is a socially acceptable program and that they work also in an environmentally acceptable manner. Switzerland pays development aid to Korea for the development of potato production. But the people who get the potatoes aren't the people who grow them. This is used in order to produce potato starch, which is then exported to Japan. So when you ask people, why is this being done? Well, we're told this is got to be done to show people how to grow these crops. And we think that that's the wrong way. Mr. Furlan, can I just tie in with this? You mentioned a point earlier on that you don't want to have aid, you want just to have fairer conditions. And you're also looking at trade barriers. There are figures that are put forward. We're told that through trade barriers, the third world loses something like $1 billion in export volume. Do you have the impression that there should be a better balance with WTO 2 and that you'll get a better balance with industrialized countries and that they will be more open to the products of the third world? Is that realistic?
Well, what happens today is that according to the numbers of the OECD, the subsidies on agriculture are around $1 billion a day. And there was a report released last week by the OECD, which is the organization of the rich countries, that is very interesting to see that the subsidies are not going to the small farmers, but to the large organizations that are providing seeds, fertilizers, chemicals, transportation, storage, equipment. And when you talk about the lobby of the agriculture, you are not talking about small farmers, you are talking about large organizations and also large farmers. So you can imagine our country has more than 20 million farmers, 22.0. That is more than US and Europe altogether. And when we talk about market access, we are talking about paying into EU 70% on the white meat of poultry. Talking that we don't have subsidies because our treasurers are poor, they don't have money to give. But also we need to learn from the experience of Europe and from Max Havelaar experience, because developing countries normally they export commodities. They deliver the goods in the port and they fill the vessels, and then somebody is processing, distributing, marketing. And it is right who said that in a cup of coffee in a restaurant, maybe 5% only is the cost of the raw material at the origin. It's the same with several other products. If you buy a bread, if you talk about the cost of wheat in the origin, it's maybe less than 10% of the bread. So we need to learn from the experiences like Max Havelaar to have, and from the Swiss with the Gruyere cheese, with origin certification and appellation contrôlée, and with the French with that, because it's amazing that the speech of Mr. Walter is similar to what we have seen this morning of the French minister, François Loos. So we are talking about environment, but I would like to invite Mr. Walter and Mr. Hauser to visit our country in Brazil and to see what we are doing, because we have really cows and real pasture. And it's real. It's not a picture only for the calendar. And we have a lot of people there. So we will improve our certification, as Paola is saying, quality seal. If it is related to organic, it will have the seal of organic, because that's the way to increase value. Otherwise, we'll be selling a bunch of products in millions of tons, and that will go through the international channels, and the chain will make more value. If you have seen in Brazil, we have full vessels of orange juice concentrate. You can go to the port of Santos and see, you can only see the pipeline putting orange juice there. But with 1 kilo of concentrate, you can make maybe 20 liters. And the price of 1 kilo is maybe less than a small box of orange juice when it arrives to the consumer. So the distribution channels to reach the consumers are far away from the producers, and the large amount of money is not going there. So if we can do that, and this is a challenge for us, not for you, but we can have the recognition from the consumer that is a good product with a fair production. The McDonald's people, they came to our country and they certified a lot of producers of beef and poultry in order to animal welfare and the local production and natural production and so on. But that doesn't appear to the consumer. So I would like to leave you a message here. You have to realize that the world is not a Switzerland. The world is not a Switzerland. The world is quite different. And if you, part of the elite of the world, if you don't help to move, we'll see the world more and more divided between poor and rich. And that will be a major problem for the future.
I just wanted to encourage you to keep the message till the end, but now we had it already, Mr. Couchepin.
First of all, I should like to say that some figures which are now given are real. When Mr. Furlan says that we give $350 billion of subsidies for agriculture in the rich countries, it is true. We give 7 times more subsidies to the agriculture of the rich country than for development help. In the world, the rich country give every year $50 billion for development and 350 billion of subsidies for agriculture. Well, it is reality and we must accept that. But what can we do? Do you want to stop agriculture in Switzerland? To give up? No, sure not. And nobody wants that in Switzerland. But if you spoke of sugar, it is true that we produce sugar. It is much more expensive to produce sugar in Switzerland than in Brazil, but also for meat. You know, meat, we raise taxes till 600% of the value of the meat. But it is the price to keep a Swiss agriculture. And the solution is probably the reform of the agricultural policy. It is what we try to do with much resistance, but not the resistance of Mr. Walter. I must say, we agreed with him. We must try to reform our agriculture and to reduce the production, to reduce the market access subsidies, which go, as somebody say, to the intermediaries and not always, they also are useful for the farmers, but they go more to the intermediaries than the direct payments. And it is what we tried during the last 4 years, to rebalance and to give more money for the direct payments directly to the farmers and to reduce the market access support. And this is probably the policy. And also to increase the ecological part of agriculture so that we can reduce the production, have an agriculture which will be less intensive and more extensive. It means at the same surface to produce less and to ask less from the environment. But you know, during these last months, and I must say, with Mr. Walter, it was always a good conversation. Not always, we do not always agree, but it was very interesting to speak with him. But I saw many demonstrations against the changes in the Swiss agricultural policy, but I never saw anybody coming and saying, give more room for the product of the third world. And practically what we did was to try to save the Swiss farmers, but on the other side, to give more room for the producers of the other country. But remember the figures. $350 billion of subsidies for agriculture, 50 billion. And I don't say that we must reduce in our country the subsidies for agriculture. I only say that we must reduce the market access support and increase the direct payment who go directly to the farmers. But it takes time.
Das wird wahrscheinlich eben das große Problem.
That's probably going to be the big problem, that the rich countries are going to come under more and more pressure from their farmers, and the farmers are going to say, well, we don't want to reduce subsidies too much, and the other countries don't have the money to pay direct payments.
Goals to improve the situation of the poor countries and to keep an agriculture. But naturally, you cannot keep all the farmers. After the Second World War, about 30% of the Swiss population was farmers. We reduce this number, but we must keep Swiss agriculture. It is necessary. We want to do that.
Okay, fair trade heißt
Our subject is fair trade. Is it an alternative? Do all benefit from free trade? I'd like to give you a last opportunity to ask a couple of questions. It's not very easy logistically speaking because you're right in the middle.
Eckenberger.
My name is Mittelberger.
Ich kann es nicht lassen, noch eine...
I've got to make one further comment. Brazil, and I'm not saying anything about production. Every agriculture has its good side, but we need to take into account that Brazil is an agricultural exporting country like the EU and like Canada. And that is why I'd also like to hear that the export countries that want to export agricultural produce, that they have an opportunity. Mr. Couchepin was recently in Mexico and said that he wanted to buy honey. That's fine with us. And small quantities are being bought from small farmers, and that is fine. But the problem for us is that we have dominant exporting countries. And these are not industrialized countries, but in my view, these countries, these exporting countries, should also take into account the fair conditions for their exports.
Herr Walter.
Let's start again. Mr. Walter slipped into the gap that you left before asking your question. There are, of course, other issues that we need to deal with. And I think that people are sharpening their knives now, and things are hotting up in the debate. But the gap between rich and poor should give us pause for thought. And I'd like to ask Mr. Walter, because he represents the Farmers' Union in Switzerland, where can we make progress in Swiss agriculture? And I didn't understand you, says Mr. Walter. Mr. Walter didn't understand you either. Perhaps we can discuss this bilaterally. But there is a growing gap between rich and poor. A lot of people are just too poor. And a lot of people don't know how to run agriculture. Other people are perhaps too rich. And we have too many products. And a lot of people don't want to do the work themselves or to get their hands dirty. But do you need people to work in agriculture, Mr. Walter? You're still reducing the number of farmers, but it doesn't seem to be the case that you're taking more farmers on. I think basically you're asking two things. One is to develop agricultural land, and we also have our problems with that in Switzerland. We recently published a study which shows that certain valleys shouldn't be used for agricultural production anymore. Switzerland imports quite a lot of its food, and we consumers pay about 8% of our wage for food. In Switzerland, we have a high price level. The cheapest foods cost in every household a given amount. And I think that we have to open ourselves. We've got to open ourselves to other countries, particularly for certain specialities. Certain things that simply can't be produced in Switzerland. But if we accept this, if we're going to build up a trade relationship, then it must also be in our interest. It must be in our interest that we're going to have fair production conditions. There is a second level, and that is environmental production. And I think that this is something that is important to us. In the final analysis, this is something that is important to us because if we continue to allow the North-South divide to continue, then that will lead to conflict. Any other questions?
So der mittlere, der da steht, mit dem grauen Pullover.
There's a person at the back with a grey pullover.
Jetzt oder nie und rasch.
It's either now or never, and if you're going to do it quickly.
Guten Abend.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Davidish. I am a pupil here in this school in Davos. You said that 6% of your sales in coffee is fair trade coffee. But what about the future? What about the future of fair trade coffee? Because the consumer in the free market always has the final word, whether they buy fair trade coffee or whether they buy the cheaper conventional coffee. We are in a time of recession, and then people tend to buy things which cost less. How do you see the future? 6% is not very much. Thank you for your question. You're quite right. It's not very much, but what I see is that the share of Max Havelaar of fair trade products for the 10 different products, that is increasing. I don't have the exact figures for last year, and so I can't tell you how much is the growth for Max Havelaar products. But I believe that Max Havelaar coffee has room to grow, and we will be able to increase the proportion. Mr. Walter was saying this. We spend for food 8%. It was 12% 5 years ago, so people are spending less and less on food in Switzerland. And people have a choice. And I think that people want, at least this is our task, to inform the consumers, to tell them why a product costs a little bit more. And when people know why they're paying more, then they can make an informed choice. There are certain people who can't afford it, but the other people can perhaps spend a little bit more on the food that they buy. It's a question of quality of life. I think that people also have to be aware of the ethical values. That's one aspect, and we also need to get the information across to consumers and to say, you have the choice. They don't need to always buy Max Havelaar, but perhaps once or twice a month, so that way they are helping fair trade develop. And there are opportunities for us to grow that market. Mr. Hauser, is it somewhat fashionable now to get retailers to do something for a better world? I don't know if you've ever negotiated with retailers. Listen, I'm not very happy when we look at the retailers as the naughty people are just out to make money. We are a service company, and we are fortunately in Switzerland because we have two big cooperatives in Switzerland, Migros and Coop. And our owners, because we're cooperatives, are our customers. We're there to provide a service to our customers. And we try to guide things, and we want to provide the best performance. And obviously, we want to be not only economical, but we want to give people a range of products to choose from. And certain people are prepared to pay more for better products. And our task is to inform people.
Mr. Vargas, wir hören, dass
Mr. Vargas, are these going to be glorious days for you?
More people nowadays who want to buy fair coffee, for example. Do you really think that this market, as you said, it's a very small market, that it's going to increase? Is it possible?
Yeah, I think it is possible. I think that one of the good things of being small is that you can grow. That's something that there is a space to grow in the fair trade market. But I think that also that has to come from the customers. That has to ask for fair trade products. to the retailer. And the retailer will ask to the one that is providing them, in this case, coffee, that they want to sell fair trade coffees. And I think it's very important to see what can be the impact of a change on the customer decision to buy fair trade coffee. In the world, we have about 25 million coffee growers and more than 100 million people that depend directly on coffee. So we can use the coffee trade as a tool to promote development, and not like it is right now, to promote or to generate poverty. I think it's very important to understand the cost of the raw material in coffee in relation to the total value of the coffee at the retail, at the shelves of the retailer, is only about 8–10%. So the increase of the price from the level of that is right now 65 cents to $26, at the end will not be much difference for the consumer. Should not be much, because the percentage of the raw material is very, very small. But that really can make a difference for the producer. So I think it's very important for the customer to start asking for fair trade coffees, or coffee that somehow are paying fair prices for the producer. Maybe it doesn't have to be certified Max Havelaar, but making sure that the producer is receiving a fair price for the product.
Paola Ghillani.
Paola Ghillani. As the CEO of Max Havelaar, you bring a new product onto the market in the recent past. Are you going to continue doing that? You've got 10 products at the moment. Are you going to continue expanding your products? Are you going to cover the non-food sector?
Entering new fields, probably the non-food field with cotton. We have already started with cut roses. And yes, we have ambitious objectives, as you know. We want to launch a new product per year, not only to extend the concept to producer organization in developing country. Just as a reminder, we are working with 350 producer organizations. This means around 800,000 families worldwide. So it's an interesting impact, even if we are just a drop in the ocean for the time being, but a very fast growing drop. And the second reason why we are launching new products, it's as well to sensibilize consumers to new problematic of trade. This is as well very important, that people knows what is happening in the trade exchanges, so that we can change together the world, better the world, and maybe then my dream that I said in the beginning will come true. This means that fair trade becomes the norm. But of course, it's very ambitious, and it's like a utopia, but I think that if we are setting milestones in order to reach more balance, be it in the condition of trade, be it in the control of the overproduction, be it as well in the management of the protectionist barrier, then maybe we can achieve this dream. But we need all together to sit at one table, to dialogue constructively in order to find the solution, the long-term solutions.
Die Kluft zwischen Arm und Reich ist ein...
The gap between the rich and the poor is an explosive subject. Klaus Schwab has said this in one of his many interviews. We've heard about the difficulties that this could create, and the need, therefore, to have fairer prices for producers so that they don't continue to accelerate the rural exodus and swell the size of cities. I think that you have perhaps got the message that you've got to try and buy more of these products, and you've got to build a lobby for this. There is one point that I'd like to ask. This is meant to be an event where there is a dialogue. Do you think that you could tell us if you are official participants in the WEF. If you are an official participant in the WEF, can you just raise your hand just so we can see? So there are a few people who've left the Congress Center to come here. So I think that's a good idea. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you. We've gone a bit beyond time. There are a lot of people in the podium who would like to have developed these ideas. And perhaps you might be able to get hold of one of the panelists before they leave and have a discussion with them. But I think that Mr. Furlan wants to make one point. He's come a long way from Brazil. He's a member of the new government. So let us give him an opportunity to give us a message. Or Mr. Couchepin as president?
Good. Okay.
Well, my brief point is that I'm not against the Swiss farmers. I am not. I'm not against the Swiss farmers. What I am against, and I hope you will be against from now on, is against the unfair competition that puts worldwide the surplus at a low price that depresses the markets. So if the Swiss Confederation wants to sustain, if you consumers want to, and taxpayers, if you want to sustain agriculture in Switzerland, that's okay for me. You give the farmers the money, they will keep the environment, direct payments, yes, and you'll keep this calendar, Swiss calendar, very nice every year. The tourists will come here, will spend money, because tourism is much more important in terms of money to Switzerland than agriculture, and that's fair, that's no problem. The problem, I'm talking about Switzerland, but I could speak about France, about US, about Japan, and many other countries that give subsidies 3 times the market price, and then they don't know what to do with the production, and they throw away sometimes as aid, as Monsieur Couchepin said, it's aid to Africa, and then you throw away some products there, and the farmers there, they cannot compete. They go away with the business, and they become unemployed because somebody is giving away production that was paid 3 times the market value. That's unfair. It's the opposite of Paola Ghillani is doing. It's unfair competition. So let's go with the farmers. It's good to give money to the small farmers to keep the environment. That's really fair. What is unfair is do not give access to the market and throw away goods in the world market at a very low price. That's unfair. That's the message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Und bis zum nächsten Forum. Morgen Mittag findet wieder ein.
Next forum, 12 o'clock. There's one also tomorrow evening. If you've got the time, come along.
Merci à vous. Invitation intéressante à une table ronde. Président, bravo pour... La revendication.
Bientôt.
I had a great listening to